The Australian dollar hits a 1-month high. Boris Johnson is released from ICU. Traditional markets kind of sludge forward, and Bitcoin's price causes more divorces. Stay tuned for Breaking Bitcoin.
This is Enzo from OKEX, and you're watching Breaking Bitcoin.
Welcome back to Breaking Bitcoin. We are live every evening at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, your evening source for everything markets and finance. I'm your host, Justin Wise, lead analyst and senior mentor at crackingcryptocurrency.com. Hopefully you guys are doing absolutely fantastic tonight. We've got a great show for you. If you are looking to develop a verifiable systems approach to your trading strategy, join our community. Take advantage of our signals and trade setups, premium indicator suite, pathways to profit, strategy building course, community mentoring, and much more. Sign up today for the premium trading group at premium.crackingcryptocurrency.com. That's premium.crackingcryptocurrency.com. Like I said, we've got a fantastic show for you tonight. The Aussie dollar today is up against the United States dollar. This is helped, of course, by OPEC Plus, the group agreeing to cut production to combat the lack of demand in the energy sector right now for oil. It's unclear at this point in time whether that is going to be enough to actually push the demand for oil up or the price of oil up in the short term. But anyways, the Australian dollar is up nearly 6% this week. Fantastic performance out of the Aussie dollar. Now, a big test for the Australian economy is going to be its jobless figures, and that's coming out this Thursday. Now, Australia has been in complete lockdown for the past 2 weeks, like most places. And they did implement, however, kind of a key difference here is they did implement social distancing rules relatively early compared to the rest of the world. So, the world, particularly Forex traders, at least I am, going to be watching to see how their employment has been impacted. Now, they have had a limited spread of the virus and a low death count on the positive side. The other thing to kind of watch for as well is their biggest trading partner, which is China, who's going to be releasing their Q1 GDP on Friday. So definitely something to watch. Expect some big moves come Friday and moving into Sunday's open. The expectation is positive now compared to what we're seeing elsewhere in the world, with Australia's central bank even floating the idea of tightening up their money printing, adding less currency into the system. So quantitative tightening as opposed to quantitative easing. But again, that can all flip on the turn of a dime with the way that the way that the markets are very, 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 very news driven right now. Now, in the United States, today was largely bogged down, as I said, with G20 oil talks. What came out of that, the OPEC Plus talks, what came out of that was a consensus to cut oil production by nearly 10 million barrels per day. However, as I said, it's unclear whether that will actually be enough to turn oil prices around in the short term. Meanwhile, for regular consumers, all they know is they drive by and they see that gas is $1.49, and they're extremely happy about that. Now, over in the United Kingdom, major news has been on Boris Johnson and his hospitalization, but with news that he has now been released from ICU and soon will be returning to the helm of government. Talks in the UK are going to largely go back to the Brexit deal or lack thereof, and the lockdown policy concerning the coronavirus. And the euro continued to trade fairly sluggishly. The euro area countries have agreed to a $500 billion euro stimulus package, but they're still in disagreement on the joint issuance of debt to pay for such a release package. Meanwhile, in Bitcoin, we started off the day with, what appeared to be the pump off of the bottom. And it's so interesting because you can actually watch and see, the lag time response, particularly for those who are watching ES futures or watching the Dow futures or the NASDAQ futures, which really pumped pretty strongly today. And they're watching, Bitcoin and how Bitcoin's perpetual contracts respond to them, because we started off the trading morning early this morning, normal central time, right around the market open, New York open. Markets put in a bit of a pre-market pump and then immediately sold off for about, 2 hours, went sideways for a couple hours, took another steep plunge. And I know a lot of individuals actually wanted to hop on and short that. That was not the movement that I did. I actually longed that local movement. I took a day trade to the upside today. I bought at the lows. I recently sold a little bit prior to the daily close, which is good. And I feel pretty satisfied with that. So We'll be looking at the markets, looking at our future positions moving forward. A lot of social sentiment coming in now that the direction is to the downside, while the majority of the market is actually, well, excuse me, if we look at BTC on Bitfinex anyways, we can see that 64% of current positions are to the long side. So the market is biased to the long side. We can see that same kind of data on other sentiment trackers for futures positions as well. But what's interesting is that the premium to short is quite high, meaning that the demand for shorting must be high. And we have to understand that not all that data is publicly available. For example, like the longs to shorts ratios on Bitmax perpetual contracts out in the future, who's holding options contracts. We don't have that data, right? The only person who holds that data is the exchange. So, and they're not publishing it unless your name is, anyways, moving right along. So, so we'll be looking at all that data. We'll be trying to glean a good directional bias from it. But first, I want to get to the news. We've got a lot to talk about today. Our first story for the day, and then we'll get into the markets. We'll also do a breakdown of the Bybit trading competition. Big shout out to Roy Coin, up over 100%. It has not been much longer than a week that we've been running this Bitcoin trading competition on Bybit, and he is doing a fantastic job. So we'll be checking in with that here in just a little bit. Big shout outs to everybody else as well. A lot of big numbers, a lot of big gainers on the Bybit board. So let's get over to the news, guys. We've got so much to talk about. Of course, if this is your first time to the channel, and if this is your 90th time to the channel, make sure to smash the like button, subscribe if you have not already. If you do not turn bell notifications on, you're not going to get notified, and you will also enjoy following us on Instagram and Twitter, where we do post exclusive content you won't see anywhere else. You won't even see it here on the YouTube channel. You will only see it on Twitter and Instagram. All right, guys, let's get started. All right, so our first story today is about the new normal, right? Now, we felt that we just had to comment on everything going on in the world, and likely am I really a salmon? No. I think I've ever claimed to be a salmon. Now, we felt that we had to comment on everything going on in the world, and likely in your local community right now. Of course, every single place around the world affected by the lockdown, the economic lockdown, and of course, fears of the coronavirus. Now, from lockdowns, business closures, lines of waiting at grocery stores and convenience stores and general stores, a lot of people are asking themselves, like, man, this is crazy. And when are things going back to normal? And what is that even going to look like kind of in a post-COVID world? When, as the buzzword has become, is the economy going to go off lockdown? And what does that even look like, right? What does that even mean? Well, one individual who claims to have all the answers lately is Bill Gates. Now, that name is often a dirty word around these parts, but let's take an objective look at his comments and see if we can read between the lines on his forecast. Now, last week, the latest CNBC Squawk Box podcast episode was released, and it featured an interview with Microsoft founder Bill Gates on the topic of the coronavirus, discussing what it's going to take for society to return to normal in the coming futures. Now, Gates obviously fancies himself a bit of an expert on pandemics, who of course warned, obviously sagely, back in 2015 that it will not be a war that kills tens of millions of people in the coming years. Rather, it would be a pandemic. Microbes, not missiles, as he put it. Now, he describes the threat of an infectious virus that is asymptomatic and gets spread unknowingly by people traveling on planes or heading to markets. This is everything that he talked about back in 2015. And in the podcast on CNBC's Squawk Box, which I have the link for right here. Yeah, Squawk Box right here. Now, in this Squawk Box episode, he goes on to say, pretty much, I told you so, describing the current outbreak as, quote, the nightmare we've all been talking about. And now his foundation is allocating $100 million to fight against COVID, as well as defining criterias for a return to normal, or really, should I say, what a new normal will be. And Gates believes that a return to what we would consider normal won't happen until people feel assured that the government can enforce or assure their safety. He says that this is going to require that governments be able to comprehensively track the spread of the coronavirus outbreak, right? Quote, until we can say to people that we're tracking this thing so well that actually going out to your job, to a car factory or a construction site, that those are safe enough. Until we get there, which we're absolutely not, no one should think the government can wave a wand and all of a sudden the economy is anything like it was before this happened. Well, the governments don't wave wands. Governments don't track the economy. They're lagging, right? The federal response, the Fed response to the economy is always lagging. It is the markets that move first. It is the consumers who decide. It is the free market that decides, and the Fed responds. The Fed responds on a global, on a large macro scale. So we can, really tell, obviously, just the mindset. This is a common mindset. This is a mindset that a lot of individuals have who don't really live in what I would consider to be, the new reality, or kind of the awareness that governments aren't all powerful. There's this worship of the state. But he goes on in this article to advise that countries currently experiencing outbreaks to rank human activity. The word is human activities. By this, he means jobs, right? In absolute terms. And to make decisions based on what roles are essential to the economy. Only people filling these roles should, I guess, be allowed to be released before a vaccine is mass produced. This all comes back, of course, to the vaccines. And he lists manufacturing as well as construction and education as fields that are critical and likely will have to be opened up in the immediate term. But normal won't be returning until, quote, normal won't be returning until, quote, an amazing vaccine, end quote, is distributed to the entire world. Indeed, Gates insists that he means that we won't return to normal until we have produced a vaccine that can reach 7.7 billion people around the world, a worldwide spray and pray type of vaccination. Now, while President Trump's latest comments on Monday point to him being eager to reopen the economy by May, Gates's timeline is rather bearish, saying that first, widespread testing and compliance with lockdown protocol must be established or implemented. Then we can organize toward an economic reboot by the end of May or early June as the best case scenario. So Gates predicting that we are going to be on lockdown until potentially early June, right? Early June. That is nearly another month and a half of the current situation, of the current normal. And he insists that consumer behaviors have changed. And even if restaurants, hotels, and airlines were ordered back to full operation tomorrow, customers still would not engage. According to Gates, what people want is assurances that specific activities are safe, are going to be safe. Confirming that a global vaccine and tracking program could take up to 18 months to roll out, advising people not to expect an imminent return to normal until that has happened. Now, he does say that other therapeutic means, such as manufactured antibodies or blood treatments, will be interventions available in the next 4 to 6 months, but its effectiveness is uncertain, and our hopes rest with a large-scale vaccine being available later. Now, he does confirm that there is a plan to beat the 18-month projection for a vaccine, but cautions against unrealistic expectations for that to happen. As for dealing with those pesky asymptomatic cases and their role in spreading the virus, well, Gates insists that the solution is having good data. And by good data, he, obviously then being able to aggregate and pin down the details of that data. But what he really means is tracking infection and spread, and saying that that is going to be critical to protecting the public. Seeing whole industries, predicting that whole industries, entire industries will see reduced demand for years to come, even if supply returns to the market, because, as he said, consumer behavior has now changed. It's almost like PTSD. Now, major spending items like cars and homes will be affected. Consumer sentiment will have changed, and its long-term impact, he is still trying to model. He doesn't know. Now, as for a return to school in the fall or activities such as sports or travel, that remains to be seen. He insists that authorities will have to determine what are essential activities and where safety can be reasonably guaranteed. Saying that what is required is a discussion concerning what activities are of societal value, as if government can determine that, and how much risk or rebound they bring with them, and that everyone participate in that conversation. Because, of course, the general public is often allowed at the government table for these kind of discussions. Gates says that he will be writing and voicing his thoughts in the coming weeks, providing one example of attending public sports type events, weighing its economic benefit relative to risk as poor and shouldn't be a prioritized activity until normal is restored, right? Because rulers get to determine these things. Finally, he says that he hopes that governments will take the input of experts, which he claims to be, and create a regime that manufacturing, construction, and schools will have to adopt to provide a safe environment to restore the economy in. Also saying that this government oversight regime, which is what he's talking about, right? He's talking about, government essentially command and controlling what economic activities are to be allowed and what we can and cannot do, will have to be extremely sensitive to how well it's working, taking feedback from prioritized testing and data in the field to guarantee it's effective and capable of intervening quickly. So this really kind of touch and go type system. So reviewing this Squawk Box interview became dystopian very, very quickly. Right? Gates is insisting that we currently live in a world that absolutely relies on government to lock down the population, track and monitor the disease and the spread of infection, with all of the intrusion into the personal lives of the citizens and our economy's livelihoods, because this has affected the jobs of millions of humans around the world, that they all hinge on the proclamations of what government decrees in the hopes of keeping us safe, which I am told that governments are not terrific at doing most of the time. And that this is the optimum solution, Well, in weighing that kind of dystopian future, first off, this is not the world we live in. First, let's be clear. The governments, at least I'm speaking for the United States and generally around the world, but this is a big misconception, I think, with people who have with people who over believe in the power of the state. This is not the world we live in. Government does not have the power to enforce a restrictive lockdown for a very long time. They would have to deploy the military to accomplish such a thing, and that is not a scenario that anyone wants to see pan out, right? And I don't say that. Generally, when people say that, they mean, well, you don't want them to do that. No, they don't want them to do that. Neither government or private citizens. Now, secondly, the more restrictive they make the lockdown and the longer the lockdown remains in place, the more people just will not abide by it, especially as more data comes out. Eventually, people will just get tired of not doing anything and being broke and jobless and go out and do things. In the positive case, that's going out to find a job regardless of the risk to themselves or society. In the negative case, it's civil unrest. Now, this type of situation is panic mode for governments. People think that it's panic mode for people. It's panic mode for governments. They know that this is a tinderbox situation where they can lose control. Situations like these can and have toppled governments before. And we do not live in an age where governments cannot be overthrown by civil unrest. And in the age of information, the age of the internet, the age of Bitcoin, we keep stepping closer and closer and closer to not needing the authority of the state to control the population. Now, Gates's worldview is predicated on a world that is dependent on governments. That's not the world we live in. The governments are dependent upon us. Governments are flailing and struggling right now to come up with a model that works well. However, again, they don't have the data. And the dangerous thing is that the experts don't have all the data, right? They don't know what they don't know. Right? Now, we know that the case fatality rate, as it's reported, is wrong. The denominator is clearly wrong, as much more people are infected with coronavirus. And the numerator is wrong, as the number of people who have died from COVID is most likely much higher. Currently, numbers state that the CFR, the case fatality rate, is about 3.5% and significantly lower for people under 40. Potentially just as deadly as the flu, maybe twice as deadly. And new studies are emerging. More data is emerging. And if we want a peaceful and reasonable solution to this, the reason why I bring those numbers up is because eventually, if we get really dystopian with these lockdowns, then eventually people are going to look around and they're going to say, well, okay, this sucks. If they're young and they're under the age of 40, they're going to look and they're going to think, okay, well, what's the odds that I die from this? Not very high. Screw this. All right, going back to work. So eventually, listen, the impact on human lives is going to outweigh these restrictive methods, right? And again, it's quite possible. New reports came out of California that say that it's possible the coronavirus infection was there as early as December, meaning that it's already pretty much raced through California. Therefore, this whole quarantine lockdown method is not going to work. And again, another thing, and this is something that Ben Shapiro talks a lot about, which is coming into the fall, once you guys let us all off lockdown, well, we're just going to infect ourselves again, right? Especially if, as the data from California would suggest, potentially, again, this isn't confirmed, if corona was actually in America and spreading around much earlier than we assumed and anticipated, then it's already more widespread. If we were able to control the infections and really track and monitor them, that is something that could potentially work, right? Especially if we're doing kind of a touch and go return back to normality. But, in a situation where so many people are infected and it's more widespread than you think or your model anticipates, and it's really almost impossible for you to begin tracking and quarantining and monitoring this data so that you can track outbreaks, this becomes kind of an untenable situation and resolution. And again, of course, the threat to liberty it's really prevalent, right? Especially because we're not dealing, listen, this would be a different story if we were dealing with this, again, from what the data suggests, from what I've seen, if we were dealing with this absolute nightmarish pandemic that killed 10 to 20% of the population, right? This would be something different. But we're looking at something where even the numbers of 5 to 7%, as was originally kind of expected, is now not looking very realistic. This 3.5% is not looking very realistic, right? And the number just keeps walking itself down and walking itself down. So again, in my opinion, what I think would be a rational thing is to, again, okay, let's keep the lockdowns working. The curve is flattening. I'm all for that. But let's let the healthiest individuals who have the lowest possible risk of infection go out, enforce social distancing or promote social distancing, and let that progress for a while and, track those results as they go, right? And get the world on its way back to normality, because viruses don't just disappear, right? Flu season doesn't just happen for 3 months and then it disappears. No, it's called flu season for a reason. It goes from year to the end of the year, right? And cases just spike in the spring and in the fall. And the coronavirus is no different, right? Flus don't go away. It's out there. It's going to be with us now, right? And again, vaccines don't protect everybody, and vaccines can have unforeseen consequences, especially when they're talking about something, they're going, listen, they want to mass produce and mass distribute a vaccine in 18 months. I don't care how smart the people you have developing these things are. There are unintended consequences when you push something so quickly. And again, you can imagine the demand from governments around the world on scientists right now to produce something like the coronavirus vaccine. In situations like this, in my experience, a lot of individuals want to ignore proper procedure, right? Ignore best practices. Because for the governments that are pushing for this vaccine to be created, they stand to gain politically by being the strong, brave, efficient, competent government that got it done, is delivering the vaccine to their people. Whereas, obviously the manufacturers of the vaccine want to get those same kind of accolades and airs. So again, not saying that it's all bad or evil or that people are just out, for their own good, but people are interested in their own self-motivation. And this is kind of scary when you start talking about, this is terrifying, right? When you get one of the most influential individuals in global health around the world saying that the only way to do this is when we have a vaccine and when we mass distribute it to everybody and everybody is relying on government. This is pretty dystopian. It's not pretty dystopian. It is dystopian, right? It is a worldview completely detached from what reality is, which is that governments rely on people. People are the source of the government's strength, not the other way around. So, if we want a peaceful and reasonable resolution to this, we hope for governments around the world to utilize the data to refit their models and not the data around their biases. So what do you guys think? Is Bill Gates mostly talking to himself, or unfortunately, is he echoing what people around the world are craving for, or even what experts are telling governments to do? Do you think that this lockdown will be over soon and that things will blow over and go back to normal? Or do you think that Gates is right and this will take another year to resolve and require vaccines and tracking systems to be implemented first? Let me know down in the comment section down below. And how much will the citizens take before they begin pushing back on governments, asking them to abandon their liberties? On a more positive note, here's something you don't see every day. Here's something you don't see every day. On Friday, someone spotted, of course, anybody could have spotted it if they have access to the public blockchain, which is Bitcoin, spotted a transaction for 161,500 BTC. That's worth more than 1.1 billion, that's Billy with a B, dollars at the time, making it the most valuable transaction in United States dollar terms to ever take place on the Bitcoin network. And to top it all off, the transaction fees to process this monster movement came in at a mere 70 United States cents. 70 cents, not dollars, cents. United States dollars. Here's the TX ID from blockchain. Now, the transaction was first spotted by the Twitter user Karma0 over there, who reported on this kind of movement in his tweet, pointing out the transaction via Block Explorer, blockchain.com. Now, later, Bitfinex CTO Paolo Ardanio replied to the Karma user's tweet. I think it's down here. Got all the usual suspects chiming in here right now. Thought it was down there somewhere. Anyways, now Paulo replied, taking responsibility for the record-setting transfer, explaining that Bitfinex was just refilling its hot wallet. About 145,000 Bitcoin went back to cold storage shortly thereafter. A little over a week ago, the crypto custody service Zappo appeared on Blockwatcher's radars, right? When they moved 100,000 BTC, valued about 633 million at the time, for a transaction fee of just 26 cents. We covered this quite a while ago. In both of these examples, the fees and the speed of the settlement are dramatically smaller than what a traditional remittance or a financial institution would charge for such a move. Now, this article cites data from the website TransferWise. I don't know how many of you guys have ever used TransferWise. I certainly have used TransferWise to remit payments in currency terms across seas. I had to deal with it all the time back in the day. Now, this estimates the cost. I typed this in here. So this estimates the cost of sending $1 million as $3,628 in total fees, 0.36% total fees, utilizing TransferWise, which is pretty much the most popular and most cost-effective system of wiring money through traditional means. And it currently puts the fee, as I said, here at over $3,600. And that's to the euro. So again, transfer rates might change, but the fees really should not. On top of that, it comes with an ETA of 70, well, this says guaranteed rate 46 hours, but it should arrive by April 15th. That's about 72 hours to be cleared as well, because there's time on the back end for the user. Now, this demonstrates how with Bitcoin, the fees for such large transfers are dramatically less, and final settlement is nearly almost instant in comparison. So again, we often get this kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for here? We get this, trying to think of his name, Nouriel Rabini. We get this like Nouriel Rabini, or this argument from individuals that, well, Bitcoin needs to compete with Visa so it can be successful. It's got to be peer-to-peer, bro. It's got to be like instant cash, bro. No, it doesn't. It just needs to outcompete the banks, and it does, and it buries them into the dirt. A system that is 10 years old and decentralized kicks traditional banks' teeth in for remitting payments or sending large transactions quicker, cheaper, secure, more safely. Period. Now, this kind of transaction can be submitted and confirmed on the network with no identity checks or the use of any trusted intermediaries along the way either. Something to think about if you've ever doubted the power or utility of Bitcoin. Last Friday's monster movement, this $1.1 billion transaction by Bitfinex shuffling coins around, did happen to top a previous high set back in September of 2019. We covered this also when an unknown whale account made a transfer. Speculation at the time was that it was the Intercontinental Exchange and their backed system coming online behind that particular movement. That has never been, can't confirm or deny that. However, if we're talking about the largest number of actual Bitcoins transacted at once, well, we have to go back to November of 2011 for that, when a trove of over 500,000 Bitcoin was moved on the network, which at the time was only worth $1.32 million. You do the math. That's a lot of cheddar. Our final story of the day before we get into today's market analysis is going to be on traders paying, this really high percentage rate to short the futures. And is this a bearish signal? So, this article, states that indicators in the Bitcoin futures market may be pointing to a bearish trend, with data suggesting traders are willing to pay a higher APR, annual percentage rate, in order to short Bitcoin. Now, crypto Twitter user CL207 generated some discussion when he pointed out in this tweet that there was a 6.5% premium to go short on Bitcoin futures right now. Others in the comment, however, view this as a counter signal, suggesting instead that this is the perfect opportunity to go long on margin. And indeed, that's what most of the market seems to be doing right now. Stats on Bitfinex BTC markets from Datamish indicate that 64% of open positions are to the long side, and that a majority of shorts anyways that are open are hedged. Now, Bitmax is showing similar sentiment. The majority of traders are going long on Bitmax as well. So, kind of the question is, what can we honestly determine about the market based from noting data in longs to shorts ratios? For example, Ethereum margin longs were at record levels before the market dumped on them shortly after hitting those peaks. Now, some maintain that it's difficult to extrapolate any sort of market movements based solely on this ratio, because the macroeconomic situation is very uncertain, even if traders are betting on a short-term rally to continue. Others point to how closely Bitcoin has been following the S&P 500 in recent weeks, meaning that future price movements might have less to do with sentiment and Bitcoin land and more to do with the wider financial market. With economic indicators looking shaky and many bigwigs, including the World Trade Organization and the International Monetary Fund, predicting a recession incoming, Bitcoin may get caught up in the general economic turmoil of the time. Of course, many in the crypto space are taking all this to be a bad sign leading into the halving event, with Bitcoin's RSI being particularly weak heading into the event. And some are even warning that we're going to see a massive dip, and that overall this market is not like others. Global conditions make this a very unique situation, and despite the bullish sentiment on display with margin longs, caution is certainly warranted. Now, to break that down a little bit, let's talk about Bitfinex longs and shorts ratios. Is this a good indicator to trade against? I would say that it used to be, right? And it certainly is intraday, right? It certainly can be a decent indicator intraday. If you're on a lower time frame and you see those long spike, that's often a good sign. And now we have a lot more advanced data with things like Bitmax, where we can really aggregate a lot more longs and shorts data. And this is, again, broadly speaking, any term, sentiment trading, right? You are attempting to trade against the sentiment of others. This often works well combined with things like price action analysis, or an understanding of sweeps or scam wicks, or any other name that they're called by, or rose by any other name. But situations in Bitcoin where, traders will, push sentiment in a certain direction, biasing traders to trade in a certain direction, and then push the market in the opposite direction to trigger stop losses before moving down, trading stop losses, right? And we've talked about this a lot. Obviously, we've had guests on the show to discuss this method of trading strategy before. But let's be clear about one thing, right? As I said, the news, and I've talked to some of the best traders that I know who say that that they enjoyed the volatility on the way down. They've made a bundle. Again, we shorted traditional markets utilizing SH and STS. That was a fantastic trade. We took the oil trade. We were short on oil. So some big plays, some big moves that occurred this year. And some of the best traders that I know are not trading right now. They are sitting on the sidelines because they say that so many things are news driven right now. Now, again, I'm not seeing that influence my trading strategy, which is why I enjoy trading the way that I do so much. Trading trends on higher time frames, just following the movements, letting them go, because I'm not seeing a lot of chop, right? I'm not seeing a lot of chop. I'm seeing some really good trending movements. It's been one of the best months to trade Forex. Just in the opening up of April, March was one of the best months I've ever traded Forex. Actually, this whole year has been absolutely killer on Forex. And Bitcoin has been no different, right? The trends have been easy to spot, easy to watch, easy to catch. Just trading with the pathways to profit. Systems trading strategy has been very, 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 very It's been a blessing to have a system like that doesn't require you to be jittery or jump. Now, again, I know that a lot of lower time frame traders are getting slaughtered, but again, they often always do. Remember, we talk about this in module 1 of Pathways to Profit, right? The failure rate for traders who trade on lower time frames, the reason why is because you have a problem. This is the prevalent problem in trading, is more information does not necessarily allow you to make better decisions, because access to more information means access to more noise, right? You want good information, and I think that's what higher time frames give you. So that would certainly be my bias. Now, as far as predicting whether Bitcoin is going to collapse down to the 3,000s versus will it not, I think the big two narratives that we are weighing against each other right now is, on one hand, you kind of have the Bitcoin halving and the hype cycle, right? Of course, a lot of interest, a lot of demand for Bitcoin right now. Of course, gold is doing very well, and we would expect to see if the stock market decides to reverse from its rally here and continue. I don't know when you say continue, because we've been on a rally for like over a week now, and reverse and begin moving back to the downside in a very volatile way ahead of the recession. Well, first off, a recession doesn't necessarily mean that the market has to do poorly. It certainly can, but it doesn't necessarily mean those two things. Secondly is, we would expect gold to do or hold its value, which is what we're looking for, right? There's a difference here for a trader or an investor when we're talking about, okay, what is going to make us wealthy? It's a possibility that in a recession, assuming all things do poorly, that there is not really the best asset that's going to make you wealthy. There are, of course, complicated derivatives, things like Bitcoin futures and short selling, things that we take advantage of in the group that you can utilize to make you wealthy and to gain your profits very well. But it's a possibility that for an investor, especially one looking to just ride this out, and at the end of the day, all traders also have to be investors because they're holding their wealth in something. Are they holding their wealth in dollars and they're watching that value decrease? They're watching their purchasing power decrease, or they're holding it in something like gold, right? Or they're holding, where are you guys holding your savings, right? Are you holding it in the stock market? Are you going to watch it drop another 80%? Are you holding it in Bitcoin? Are you going to watch it drop another 50%? Are you holding it in gold? You're going to go watch it drop another 30%, right? So it's possible that in situations like these, I think a good mental exercise is to consider not, and this is good investing generally anyways, not necessarily for the long term, what is going to make you wealthy, what is going to preserve your purchasing power the most moving forward until the market is more optimum for high risk trades to the upside, when the market is in a growth cycle, right? When it's possible that we're not. It's possible that we are not in a growth cycle. It's possible that we're in a depreciation cycle, and this is a rally to the upside. Now, again, monitoring the higher time frame trends, watching your baseline, watching your systems, watching your initiator and confirmer, all the systems that we talk about and teach in the trading group, I think are invaluable to kind of avoiding this noise and exposure, because otherwise you can get swept up and caught up in the speculation and just rampant, people who talk about the market as if they know which way it's going to go. Nobody knows which way it's going to go. I've talked to venture capitalists. They don't know. I hear conflicting things over here, extremely bullish venture capitalists who it's very, very interesting to see the different thoughts and opinions coming from everybody. But irregardless, I would say that the longs and shorts data is, in my opinion, not very conclusive of much, except something that has been forecasted time and time again. Irregardless of whether Bitcoin is almost always biased to the long side. Bitcoin is almost never, and the funding rate is almost always positive. Longs almost always pay shorts. And often when the funding rate turns negative, when shorts pay longs, we see a big pump, right? To clear out short sellers. We have to understand that the biggest selling pressure under normal operating circumstances for the Bitcoin marketplace is miners, right? There is this constant selling pressure onto the marketplace because miners have to sell the proceeds of their operation to be profitable, right? Pay for overhead, and of course to cash out. Now, sometimes they hold excess accumulated BTC to speculate. Sometimes they do not. And so the fact that under normal conditions, the price rises at all is pretty bullish, because that means with all the selling that occurs on a daily basis, all the blocks that are mined every single day, that means that there is still more buying volume than that. So, like in general, Bitcoin's price going up is a miracle in and of itself because it has this built-in selling pressure to the downside. And the fact that the majority of individuals are long on it anyways, to me, long term, right? I'm talking, years out, is one of the most bullish signals and signs that you could ever find. Because it means that the community is strong. Even the speculators are strong, right? Even when Bitcoin tanks, obviously, often we're still biased to the long side, right? Take that as you will, but that's my thoughts on the situation. All right, so with that being said, let's get to the markets, guys. All right, this is a good opportunity to say, hey, thank you guys so much for the likes. Highly appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to smash the like button. We highly appreciate that. It lets us know you enjoy the content. If you're watching, if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to do so. The bell icon will make sure you never miss an episode because we are live every evening at 9 p.m. And starting next week at noon, we're going to be, so starting next week, so next Monday, we will be, wait for it, hold on, wait, let me get it ready. Yes, next week, we will be returning to the noon hour for our live stream. Yes, European audience, celebrate, drink deeply of the mead of success and frivolity. Yes, we will be returning to the 12 p.m. Central Standard Time slot starting next Monday. All right. With that being said, let's go take a look at the markets. All right, let's get a nice broad overview here. All right, we'll start off on the daily as we are wont to do. On the daily time frame, we are above the baseline. So long-term directional bias here is to the upside until we cross and close below that baseline. And for me personally, below my baseline initiator here. Where are we currently? We're like right at the qualifying line. So if you go off yesterday's qualifying line, we're actually just a little bit above it. We haven't really dipped down below and came back up. And we're also below my continuation filter. Now, what's really interesting is that, again, as I was saying earlier, the trade that I took today, I took the long on Bitcoin early this morning, saw price shoot to the upside, waited for the pullback, longed the pullback. There was that 1 hourly candle that fell down below my entry. And then we've had a pretty good day. And again, like I said, I sold just about right before daily close, about an hour or so before daily close. So good, profitable is like 2.5% or something like that today. So pretty good movements for me. Ended up closing out some profitable shorts as well, both in Bitcoin and both in Ethereum. What was the unprofitable trade? So this morning closed out an unprofitable short on BNB, and then prior to today's daily close, I'm actually long on BNB. And somebody said in the chat that BNB is pumping. So cool. Good. Long on that pair as well. All right. That's some satisfying confetti. Good. All right. So anyways, price for me on the daily needs to close above 7,017. We need to close above that continuation filter to get that re-entry signal to the upside. But here's the thing. Paralox, my confirmation indicator, which lets me know which confirms the direction of the trend for me. As we can see right here, Paralox is below the initiation level, i.e. it has printed a bearish signal. It is negative. It is not confirming long trades at this point in time. Now, this doesn't mean that the overall trend directional bias is to the downside. No, of course not. We are above my baseline indicator. That means that we want to be trading in the direction of the trend, which currently is being set as bullish or to the long side. Does this mean that price cannot go down? No, it simply means that me personally am spot long on Bitcoin, have been spot long on Bitcoin since we crossed and closed above the baseline, which is my hedging strategy. And it means that I will be looking for trade setups on the daily and the other timeframes that I trade in the direction of that trend. It also means that any automated systems that I currently have running right now are biased to the long side, right? Which of course they are. All right, so 70.17, closing above that would be a potential reentry signal on me, continuation signal to the long side on Bitcoin. Otherwise, I would be watching just intraday for trades right now. And on the daily, looking for shorting, I would be looking for price to cross and close below 61.84, and I would be looking to take those shorts. And that's really the thing. That's the way that I trade. Everybody is obsessed with shorting the local top and like getting it before price goes down. Well, I like to know with pretty good confidence when price is going to continue to go down and then short from there. And when price is going to continue to go up and long from there. And I leave that head and tails, as they say. Right? I'm a trend following trader, so I trade. I eat the body of the animal. I leave the head and the tails for the reversal traders. They can have fun with being wrong 60-80% of the time. Calling tops and bottoms. Anyways. So that's where we're at on the daily time frame. Daily trend looks okay. I'd say Wadatar explosion volume is very weak right now, but confirming and biasing trades to the upside. So really nothing to report in there on the 4-hour time frame. Come on, baby. Let's throw. Okay. On the 4-hour time frame, we actually are going to be getting our first 4-hour. Our first in a while. This one was chop and nothing was confirmed, which is good. We're going to be getting our first 4-hour potential trending long signal here on the meso time frames. But Parallax is not confirming this movement. So we just got a little bit more work to do, right? And of course, we're below the dead zone on Wadatar explosion. Overall, if we're paying attention to the dead zone indicator, it has really kept us out of all the BS movements, and it has really kept us out of all the BS movements in Bitcoin land. If we look where that dead zone filter is, right, tells us, okay, this long is something we can trade, and that was certainly tradable. Let's see here, and this movement right here, which was certainly tradable, it did lead to this, and confirmed on this candle. Even if you missed this entry, it got chopped out over this course of 12 hours, led to this sell-off right here, which was good. Here's this 4-hour trade. This was barely tradable. I think this would have hit a 4-hour take profit, although I'm not sure. Me looking at this trade, I probably would have lost on this trade. This is not a long that I took, but I certainly would have lost money had I taken this trade. I just stayed short, although I'll throw out this area right here off this 4-hour signal. And as I said earlier this morning, took the long trade, and I've recently closed that trade out, and we'll be watching for reentry. Again, I'm simply spot long right now. Looking at the lower time frames and intraday, let's break down today's price movements. So again, as I came to the markets, I sat down and started analyzing around 7 o'clock in the morning. And we were right here. And it was so funny because it was this candle right here. It was actually 6:15. So it was earlier than that. I was up watching the markets a little earlier than I thought. So yeah, it was 6:15 a.m. for me. And I looked at the chart and we were right here. We were right here on this candle, right? This candle had just closed and this candle was just opening up. And I said to myself, I think we're going to pump. And I went and got an iced coffee. And when I came back to the chart, like literally 5 minutes later, price was like right about here. And I said, okay. So I didn't long that movement. I waited. Price ended up pulling back, ended up exiting my short right around here. And then I went long around 6706, I believe. 6706. 6706 is where I actually caught my market entry today. And then price did put in this little kind of, this 30-minute fear section right here, but rebounded right back. That was a stop loss hunt. And then moved nicely to the upside. And then right around this area, right before the daily close, in this chop area, I ended up letting my position go. So it's pretty good. Overall, pretty good movement. I originally had a take profit of about, I think 70.40, I believe was my actual original posted take profit for the trade. But I just decided that, it's a day trade. I'm about to walk away from the computer. It's getting close to the end of the day. I've been working all day on the website. Make sure you guys go check out the new website. We've added a new Meet the Team section at the bottom of the main page and added a new web page for our premium indicator suite and more information on there. And where we currently sit on the market today is trading above yesterday's point of control. Often I'm biased to think that we generally go back and retest the previous day's point of control, which would be pointing us down to around the 66.90 level. If we get a retest of the 66.90. Now, if we tap off that, rally to about 68.67, then I'm going to feel fairly confident that we can actually rally a little bit higher over here. We did end up We did end up coming over here and testing and rejecting actually from this single print about 2 days ago. From the single print 2 days ago, as you guys can see on VPSV, was a previous point of control prior to that. So we did actually come back up to that level. That is the level, in my opinion, that we really need to get over. So that's 69.11. So let's just say 6,900. If we can get some good, strong closes here above 6,900, I think that we can actually push higher, at least to the 69.98 level, to around and test 7,000. And above that, where we got to get over is about 71.38. Failing that, if we do end up rejecting from this single print right here, this previous point of control of these last 2 days, if we do end up rejecting from here and then losing 66.86, well, then take profits to me to the downside on short-term timescales, become 65.50, and then getting down a little bit below that, of course. Where's the other chart? 59.98 is where I believe we'll be testing, right? We have, so getting it over here. We have previous points of control right here. We have an untested, unfilled point of control extending to the right. If we look at the hourly time frame, this becomes a little bit clearer. So yeah, these two areas, 64.37 and 59.98, become attractive downside targets, assuming that we lose yesterday's point of control and end up rejecting from that. And of course, where's kind of the take profit target if you want to take the reversal short right now? Well, I think back to the low and expecting a sweep of that 65.50. But if you're really expecting 65.50 right now and not that we bounce from 6,700, then I don't see why you're not targeting lower anyways, because you are actually expecting this to completely fail. So overall, I think a good area to be kind of sitting on your hands and watching for confirmation, which means for a lot of people, so that puts them in the default thing of like, well, Bitcoin's been moving up. I'm not sure that's going to move up, so I'm going to hedge. I understand that. That's totally respectable and fine. Renko is actually bearish on the perps. So the Renko trend is to the downside. Ethereum is the bearish Renko trend as well, hasn't flipped to the upside. Ethereum is in a similar place on the daily time frame. The directional trend is biased to the long side. We are in a no trade zone in between the baseline and the continuation filter. Crossing underneath the continuation filter means to pump the brakes on long trades right now and wait for a reentry signal, which we haven't got yet. Minx has crossed under. Minx generated the take profit long signal at the actual high. And on the very next signal, the breaking Bitcoin continuation filter gave the exit signal. And now we're just drifting lazily to the right side here. We have falling Guadalajara delta divergence here. Although it is still positive, it is not giving us any indication to actually initiate a trade. And Parallax, very similar to Bitcoin here, has flipped short as well, or bearish. So there's no bullish trend confirmation coming in from any of my other indicators. And as I said, Minx is still underneath the noise line, right? Has not crossed back up to the upside. So these are all, again, not bearish signs, but they're not positive signs. What's bullish is where we currently are, positioned above the baseline. Now, getting long above 162.36 on the daily time frame makes sense to me, and getting short below 126.13 makes sense to me based on the daily time frame. We still need Guadalajara explosion to give us bearish or negative volume delta or a rising explosion level. And that's going to be the level that needs to be breached to confirm more downside movement for me. Until we get there, again, I expect consolidation or chop until we close below one of these significant levels. At least that is how I am positioned to deal with this. Now, going to the 4-hour time frame, we saw something, again, very similar to Bitcoin, but just a little bit more volatility as well. Sorry, let's see here. Let's throw this on. Here we go. So looking at the 4-hour system, we actually didn't get the chop and in this range that we got with Bitcoin. This is like one of the brief times where Bitcoin puts in a big movement that Ethereum didn't outperform it on. But Ethereum has been short since the 9th of April. We took this short as well, shorting from the relative tops on both Bitcoin. Actually, not Ethereum. No, we ended up catching a worse entry on Ethereum. We ended up reshorting Ethereum down here and then taking profit earlier this morning. Yes. Bitcoin, we shorted from the relative highs. But as you can see, we flipped bearish right on the 8th, and we've been trending underneath that bearish initiation for a while. And now we're testing at those levels. So the meso timeframes here, the 4-hour, would be telling you to be alert for a meso 4-hour long here on a broach above 158.35. Now, again, we need more confirmation. We're just coming off of negative volume delta divergence from Wadatar explosion and coming off a rising but negative bearish posture from Parallax here. So Parallax does need to cross above the 0 line here and turn positive. We also need to get some bullish confirmation from Wadatar explosion. Minx, of course, giving us the early trending long confirmation signal here on the current 4-hour candle, but nothing is confirming. So which means this is a flat area. This is a time for me on the 4-hour to do not a lot of stuff. Crypto Caveman, that's a question I get all the time. Since I am spot long on Bitcoin, should it dump overnight? Do I have orders set to hedge or go short? And how do I go about managing that? So the answer is yes, I do have orders set to go short, and they are below the baseline. I also have what we call stank bids, right? Which are just really low orders. I use Kraken for this. I have really low buy orders. And these aren't really big orders, but they're certainly like, so again, like people are like, well, man, like, why wouldn't you put like $1 million on that, bro? Like if price ever dipped to like $20, you just whop that up. Here's the thing, because the max margin that I can use on Kraken is very low. And that means that I have to keep a ton of funds on Kraken, and I don't really trade on that exchange. I keep most of my funds in cold storage, and I use margin to trade. So the reality is, like, yes, I'm spot long on Bitcoin. I don't really worry about massive price dumps overnight. Like everybody's really worried about this. I don't care if my equity drops 20 or 30%. Because that is, again, I'm comfortable to have BTC. I have an equity split in the first place, so not all of my funds are in Bitcoin. Spot long simply means of the funds that I have of my trading equity in Bitcoin, I'm spot long in them. I'm not hedged, right? Now, all of the premium members can go see my equity split at any given moment, and that can change from day to day. Often it just depends on how active I'm being in other markets. Like right now, my equity split is more in dollars. The reason why is because I need dollars as margin to trade Forex and traditional markets right now, and I'm being very active in those markets. And cryptocurrency, I'm trading Binance margin and Bybit futures, and doing spot. Again, I'm holding spot or a hedge, and I give my advice on that. So I'm not really worried about that. A, I'm long-term bullish on Bitcoin, and B, it's not very, so the way that I trade, if we get a large movement to the downside, we were going to get that movement anyways. And I am either hedged or not hedged. In my experience, trading the way that I trade, it's just not something that I worry about, because negative 20, negative 30% movements for Bitcoin happen, right? And sometimes you're going to be on the wrong end of that. Like there's nothing you can do to avoid that. And, setting orders in places where you shouldn't set orders so that you don't get the advantage of the recovery is not a good idea, in my opinion. It's not the way that I trade. It's not something that I worry about. My honest opinion, right? Bitcoin drops 20%. Bitcoin drops 20% if I was long on it. Who cares? It is what it is, man. FUSD perpetual futures contracts here on Bybit, looking at the Ethereum pairs. So something similar here. Again, consolidated mostly at the point of control for the majority of the day. I had this nice, again, just kind of lazily consolidating at the point of control. Sell off, sweep of this previous low. Nice pump to the upside here. Scamwick dumped back down, formed a higher low, and we were off to the races from there, right? And I think really the good price action signal here was, of course, when we ended up forming this higher low, when we formed this higher low right here, and then we reclaimed the point of control with two subsequent higher lows. And then again, broke resistance right here on an even higher low as well, coming off higher low. So this is exactly the pattern that I talk about, the breaking resistance pattern that I talk about all the time when we talk about higher lows, testing resistance multiple times, and coming up to retest it for the second or third time, forming a higher low than the previous higher low, and going less than 50% from the distance from the last test to the last low, right? When we close roughly about 50%. This is pushing it. Obviously, that's like closer to like 80% or like damn near the whole way, right? I get it. But again, the pattern that I look for, ideally, if you were to look at the algorithm, if you were to look at the kind of system, the overall, if I were to put it in algorithmic terms, it would be 2 to 3 previous tests of resistance, continual higher lows, and on the actual breakout formation, the most recent higher low travels 50% or less of the distance between the previous test of resistance and the last higher low. So again, like price comes up and test resistance, comes down, and wherever it stops at, the last time it went down and came back up to test resistance, it goes less than 50% of that distance, right? If that happens on the second or third bounce and we start moving up from there, I generally expect to see price move up. All right, so yeah, and Jason is short as well. So what do we got on the current bar? Again, this is a freshly opened bar. We don't have a lot of data here, but again, the important levels here to look at are we came back up and retested that point of control. Again, rejected from that point of control. Upside single print yet to be filled is at 161.53, around 161.50. So overhead area to watch for. Getting above that, of course, we have the previous highs coming in around 164.50. Really go up and test those areas as well. Those also correspond to single prints or violent rejections from this previous area, as well as a little bit of gapping here and single prints on the 9th, but those single prints have been filled. So really all we're talking about right now is violent rejection, which were previous retests of single prints, and this unfilled single print right here on 2 days ago. So interesting. We'll watch and see here. Again, generally, what we often see around this time of day is consolidation around the point of control. We can get trending movements, but we'll watch and see. I don't really see anything that would indicate that to me at this point in time. Renko trend is, as I said, bearish. But trying to flip to the upside, but just has not happened yet. All right, let's take a look back at our longer-term volume profile analysis. All right, so here we are. Look what price has done. I talked about this last week. The current weekly has just opened up. Of course, it is not looking like a good weekly candle, but it's just Monday, so let's give this thing some time to play out. You know, obviously, looking at the weekly right now, I'd be biased to see a little bit more of downside pressure over the course of this week. But let's see, and let's watch and see how it plays out. Let's get some confirmation and some nice objective trading signals, particularly on the 4 hour or something like that. So anyways, we have overhead resistance on the macro scale here from 81.47, and it's not 81.47 to 10,214. For me, it's really like two distinct levels of resistance. One level of resistance is 8,000 to 8,200. And should we breach above that level, that's acceptance into the upper range, the upper value area of Bitcoin's price here. And generally, I would expect to see acceleration until we test the upper boundary of resistance around 10,000, 10,200. And if we can break above that, well, you just kind of like hold that long, because now you're going into ludicrous speed, because Bitcoin will often accelerate. Now, again, it often accelerates and rejects violently, but it behooves you to be on the side of the acceleration. You just want to be aware that when you see the first like big massive red candle, it's time to X on out. Where we are right now is the fair market accumulation range for Bitcoin's price, right? And this area stretches from 6,000 to 6,900, 6,800, a little higher, a little lower. But again, this is the point of control. This is the previous consolidation area in 2018. This was the point of contention and reversal in 2019. And this is the area that price has oscillated around for 2 years now. Over 2 years. And it's a very important area. So this is what I would consider the fair market value. This is the fair market range of Bitcoin's price. Below this level, breaking below the 6,000s, again, we have to assume the price will accelerate until it reaches the lower boundary of acceptance, which is down around 3,300 to 4,000 currently. This is where we consolidated at the previous lows in 2019. And although I don't really think we're going to go back down that low, that will be confirmed if we reject from this current fair value area, because that is what it is. That's how the chart works. So overall, don't really see anything indicative here. As long as we're in the yellow box territory, as long as we're between 6,000 and 7,000, I consider this reaccumulation because we did just bounce off the lows. Often the market doesn't give you a second time to buy the bottom, if indeed the previous bottom was the bottom. And we've also talked about the qualitative differences between the last time, we've talked about the actual technical differences between the rejection and the massive dump down into the 3,000s, right? Caused by Bitmax's rogue AI, their Bitmax liquidation engine, not actual market dynamics. Because if you can look at where the CME futures went down to, OKEx futures, all of these things, right? The not natural market dynamics, natural selling pressure did not push price down that low. It was manipulation of the liquidation engine and failure of the liquidation engine that caused price to go below 4,000. Comb the desert! Comb the desert. Find us that buy-in level, man. When light speed just isn't enough, baby. You got to go ludicrous speed. The indicator that I'm currently using right now is volume profile fixed range with the value area turned on and tweaked to my custom settings. It's just a TradingView premium indicator. Yes, sirree, Bob. Speaking of Bob, how you doing, Bob? Paul, Bob, the builder in the house, breaking it down. All right, with that being said, let's go to your questions. What does it look like? I looked at my monitor. It felt like there's an arm behind me. Oh, my dear. It looks like something fell over there. Look at that. You see that little thing right there? That's a little black thing. A little black piece of foam kind of fell off the wall. Put it back up after the show. Speaking of which, I think I'm going to bring the green screen back a little bit for some future scenes. This DSLR is fantastic for this scene, but I like having all my monitors, so it is a little disconcerting to only use the one. I can clearly tell your Schwartz is bigger than mine. All right, we ain't found stuff. Let's go to the questions. Sorry, let me also while I'm here. Hey. D Live, I see you over there. What do we got over in D Live tonight? There's not even a single donation for me to be like, you all rule. Everybody over in D Live is awesome. You guys do so much on a daily basis, every single day. I got nothing. Thank you so much. Drakon ST, thank you so much for the follow over there on Twitch. And FOREX Meister, 13 months resubscription. Thank you so much for all the dead mouse emojis. Also, shout out to all three of you guys watching over there on Twitch. Highly appreciated. And shout out to everybody watching on YouTube as well. Okay. Cheering those bits. Thank you so much for the bits, FOREX Meister. You're the man. All right. So Zuhair Nakvi, thank you so much for the 10 Australian dollars, my friend. I hope you're doing well tonight. He asked, yesterday closed above the qualifying line on the daily baseline. What needs to happen for you to see this pullback as simply a test of the daily baseline? Long 6,700 here. Well, again, thank you so much for the question, man. Hopefully you're doing well down there in sunny, quarantined Australia. Here's the thing. When we talk about closing above the qualifying line is there not so much to signal trades for me. It's there to signal when not to enter trades for me, right? So certainly we did close above the qualifying line on yesterday's close, but we also were closing above the qualifying line. So it's not like we crossed below and then crossed back above. That would be a little bit more momentum indicated for me. So essentially, the trade that I took today, by the way, I know that you're a premium member. The trade that I ended up taking today, intraday, was essentially a reversal baseline bounce, right? I bought the dip on Bitcoin's price movement today, and took it to the upside. Now, I didn't hold that as a daily time frame trade, but I did essentially take that play, and I certainly did consider price's proximity to the baseline in accordance with that. Now, what I need to see in order to consider this a pullback is not really going to see. I'm not a reversal trader, Zuhair. So I am not going to really know until after the fact and I get the confirmation signal to go along, because I'm not really interested in catching the lower end of the movement. I'm interested in detecting and confirming that there is going to be a movement whatsoever, and then I buy the reinitiation of the trend. So I am always going to enter into a trade about 25 to 35% of the way through it. You know, I don't enter trades, with a few exceptions, right? Obviously, I do intraday trading and forex trading where I do some discretion. But for the most part, my most successful trades and how I'm able to be consistently profitable is being patient and waiting for trend initiation and worrying more on filtering out false signals. Really, that's where the strength of PTP lies in. It's knowing exactly what components you need to have a verifiable system and how to use filtration to your benefit. And of course, supplying individuals with the tools and techniques and tips and tricks that they need to backtest, store their data, log their data, analyze their data, and what to do with that data. And of course, the community and mentoring to put it all together with. But for me, what would I need to see? I'd need to see price cross and close back above the continuation line. I would need to see a long signal from Minx. I would need to see Parallax go bullish. Or I need to see a powerful signal from Watertower explosion above the dead zone. And I literally see none of those things. The only thing that is really bullish for the only thing that's really bullish here right now is that we're above the baseline and the breaking Bitcoin initiator, right? If we lose those two things, I mean, get them shorts on, baby. It's summer weather out here. Thank you again for the question, my friend. Hopefully you're doing awesome over there in Aussie. The pie guy says, damn, bro. Not about no filtration filter. Looking for the thing to be above the other thing. The little thingy, and then I hit the green button. Let's see here. Where is... Here we go. Ran away from it. Dang nabbit. Robert says, a good question. Would love to hear my take. Imagine if Bitcoin is the only world currency. Everyone used it. All businesses, big and small, pay in BTC. Everything is bought and sold with BTC. So if everything was utilized in BTC, I assume that there would be a credit system and settlement would occur on a daily or weekly basis between intermediaries. Again, that's just my thinking, applying like the world as it is right now. If Bitcoin was the world currency, the entire world of commerce and transaction right now is built on layers of settlement and intermediaries, and bringing that back, pulling that away from the banks and establishing the commerce is great, but it's also going to require, it's going to require that companies and individuals and that our social system get beefed up a little bit. Because right now, what citizens, what the individual has done is abdicated the right over their financial sovereignty to the banking system, banking cartels, or convenience and security. And what I mean by security is that they don't have to be bothered. So it's really convenience, right? Oh man, I gotta protect my own money and be my own bank and defend myself. Yeah, like you exist on a ball of rock hurtling through space at God knows how many thousands of miles per hour, orbiting around a giant fireball, and you're gonna die someday, and nobody knows what happens after that. Yeah, bro, like learn to defend yourself and control your own money. It's the least you could do. It's the least you could do. No, do not give all of your money to a financial system and a financial institution that has done nothing but do everything in their power to bankrupt Main Street and average citizens for, I don't know, several thousand years, going back to fiefdom. Sorry. With that being said, if Bitcoin was the only world currency, I think that price would be relatively stable. I do not think price would be almost at all volatile. I think everything would be done via mobile application. I mean, that's a super interesting question. Listen, I am certainly open to if Bitcoin was the only world currency, then I feel like we would have lots of things running off second and tertiary chains. Or something would be different with transactions. Seems like transactions would be different. Yeah. A super interesting thing, man. And certainly the future, or something like it that I wish to live in one day. But again, people do not people understate the impact of financial sovereignty. It is absolutely essential. Listen, it is a conspiracy and a fallacy perpetrated on mankind for thousands of years, going back longer than that, right? But listen, the path of history is a continual improvement for a human person born under the randomness of chance into a middle, upper middle, lower middle, or lower class strata of society to have equality of opportunity, right? Equality of opportunity. And a lot of that comes with financial sovereignty, right? The ability to control and save and have your money to build wealth. Listen, it's my strong opinion that almost all of modern monetary theory is wrong, that the current system is inherently diseased and corrupt, that it will not work, that it is not sustained, that fractional reserve lending is a failed experiment, and that we do fundamentally. So everybody, the kind of argument that I get a lot is that the current monetary system will work and we will figure out a way to make it work, and we'll just keep triaging it essentially and triaging it. No, it is going to fail, and you need something that is hard and deflationary. And then the argument is, well, that doesn't make a good currency. Yes, it does. You need to restructure the way that you have allowed modern economics and corporate business to evolve under the false premises of a hyperinflationary currency. There's no other long-term sustainable or viable solution. It's not the government's job to stimulate the economy. They don't do a good job of stimulating the economy anyways. Economic stimulus is not the government's job. Get them out of the economy. The economy is the role of the free market and consumers in an open and public marketplace, right? So the government certainly can have a role as far as, public health. Certainly, I can be okay with that, right? Transitional anarchist. But the government should have almost no role in economics. They are terrible at economics. They are fraudulent at economics. Get them out of the economy. It's none of their business. Free market. So that would certainly be my opinion about that. It's not the government's job to use fractional reserve lending to print fraudulent money, which is a tax on the current population and current savers, and also a debt burden on future generations. Printed money, the idea is that the debt never comes due, right? It's a debt that the government owes itself. No, it is a debt that the taxpayers pay eventually over a long enough time horizon, because it is a debt on future taxpayers. It is a burden on future generations. So you are selling your avarice and current sins down the pathway to unborn children. Governments have always done that. Governments have always bargained with current risk and reward against the lives of future generations. They've always done that. And they are irresponsible to hold and control that power. Current consumers and participants in the current economy do. So in the event where Bitcoin is a world economy and a virus shuts down the economy, okay, virus shuts down, right? You have local charities to help people out. You have like right now, there are individuals all over the world, organizations all over the world that are feeding people, clothing people, helping people, giving people water, food, shelter, and they always have, because humans are generally inherently good creatures, right? And the reason and also we're moving into a digital age where so many jobs are going to be able to be done remotely. I would also assume that in a world that has adopted Bitcoin as kind of as a reserve currency or as a normal currency, that you'd have slightly more rational government. I don't know, people are generally inherently stupid, but it is what it is. Where we do what I'm advocating for, which is allowing people 40 and under who have a very low risk of the disease go back to work, enforce social distancing, make people wear masks. Right? Invest in hand sanitizer. Like, it is what it is. Certainly get the government out of the economy. All right, big winners over there on DLive. Squeaky Tadpole and Ricky T throwing it down, baby. All right. And the Pie Guy, thank you so much for the ice cream. And Midwest, thank you so much for the diamond, brother. All right. More questions. Ryan Williamson says, what are my thoughts on Bitmax taking over Binance? I don't know. This many. Next. Sorry. To be honest, I don't know anything about that. All right, with that being said, guys, let's talk about what's going to be coming out. So we've got I had the chance to sit down with John Ehlers last week, and I'm going to be editing that interview and publishing that on YouTube. I spoke to Garrett Coons from Hedera Hashgraph. That'll be coming out later this week. Enzo from OKEX will be publishing that interview this week. Let's see here. Somebody else. Jonathan Sella of Props, You Now. Awesome, dude. Great interview. Be publishing that this week. And yeah, big changes to the website, so make sure to stay tuned for that. My team is working on upgrading the website, and once we're kind of done with that, we'll also be making a new series of educational material. So we will be making some day trading material, some new day trading strategy building courses, and day trading courses in general. We're going to be doing some more stuff on risk management, of course, and we're going to be adding to the Pathways to Profit strategy building course content. So make sure to stay tuned for that. All premium subscribers will have access to that, and we will keep you guys abreast of any future updates. Getting back to the main scene here. All right, guys, it's about time to start walking my way to the door, because it's getting late. I've got to get some rest. I get up early because I want to get this market. Thank you guys so much for joining me for another episode of Breaking Bitcoin. Of course, I've been your host, Justin Wise. I am the lead analyst at crackingcryptocurrency.com. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, sarcastic remarks, or death threats, please leave them in the comments section here on YouTube, which you can access at yt.crackingcryptocurrency.com. If you are looking to implement a verifiable trading system into your personal strategy, or you want to take advantage of our premium signals and trade setups, our indicator suite, our community mentoring, our live chat, so much more, make sure to check out everything that we do at crackingcryptocurrency.com or sign up today for the premium trading group at premium.crackingcryptocurrency.com. Links are, of course, down in the description. Thank you so much to our partners, Spectre Security Coin and X42. Links for them are down in the description as well as on the main page of our website. Thank you so much to all our partners and sponsors in the market. Links are in the description down below. Thank you so much to the team who helps put together the episode every day, as well as do the analysis and research. And of course, thank you to the viewers for joining me for another episode. Make sure to smash up the like buttons on YouTube if you have not already. Subscribe if you haven't already. Clicking the bell icon ensures that you will never miss an episode. And if you're watching on DLive or Twitch, make sure to give us a follow or even consider supporting us with a subscription. It helps make the content better. And of course, remember, let us know in the comment section what you learned. Helps us know that you guys enjoy the content. It helps us engage you better as an audience. And until tomorrow, guys, we will be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time for another episode of Breaking Bitcoin Market Analysis. I'll see you then. Trade safely.